Hi, welcome once again to Human Resource Management. We're now in Module 3, about halfway through our term. Today I'd like to talk with you about employee development and training. I like this quote and I wanted to start out with it. It's from Jeffrey Pfeffer, who, as you can see, is from Stanford University. He writes a lot on the importance of the human aspect to organizations and how actually the humans in your organization can even provide a sustainable competitive advantage. One of the things he says here is that if you believe in training and developing people, you don't necessarily need a huge budget, but you should start with your own behavior. And I really like that because I think we get so busy talking to people about what they should and shouldn't be doing instead of remembering how powerful example is. And we talk about this sometimes in leadership, where being a role model and modeling the behavior that we would like to see in the people around us can be really important. So in an organization, one of the things we want to do is an assessment. We talked about assessments in looking at, who should we recruit for a job if we have a job opening or we have a need in our organization to add more staffing. The same thing holds true if we do an entire overview assessment of our organization. So if we look at what our organizational performance is today, but also where we would like to be tomorrow, then that can give us an idea of the need for developing our staff, our current talent. What is it they're going to need to learn going forward to be successful? So we start with the organization as a whole. Where are we headed? What kinds of new products or services will we be adding, as well as our competitive strategy. And then drill down into jobs and actual individuals to see if there is a gap in what they'll need or need today and what they actually display. So there are a variety of training and development methods, and some of them you can, there's a list on your screen, and some of them you're probably really familiar with. Things like role-playing, seminars where you actually get people interactively involved. Job rotation and cross-training are really important. Moving people around an organization can help them see not only the various individual jobs, but also the big picture. Anyway, you can see from this that, again, there are a variety of methods, and some of these are really industry dependent and individual dependent. Some people learn differently, and we'll talk about that in a minute, depending on their specific learning style. Also, a lot of this has to do with the size of the organization and possible budget involved. One important aspect to the development of our employees and managers is mentoring. So I think that mentoring and coaching of our current talent and people within our organization is often an afterthought and is not something that's engaged with as much as it could be and as much as it could contribute to the overall performance of the organization. Developing mentoring relationships is something that can be done inside or outside your organization. It could be done within your industry. For instance, if you were in healthcare and you were a nursing supervisor, you might develop a coaching or mentoring relationship with a nursing manager from another organization, somebody that you can confide in and that can help you understand the role that you play. So sometimes we see this within various professions, that there are professional organizations where we meet people who we can opt to choose as mentors, or who may do something informally with us in terms of mentoring. Mentoring doesn't have to be a formal process. It can be an informal one as well. Today in today's workplace, we often see this thing we call reverse mentoring because we have a wide range of different generations, probably the largest span of generational employees that we have seen in the history of our workforce. Today, we have so many different age groups that have different cultural training and technological training that we sometimes see older employees learning from younger employees, not just the other way around. And this can be a wonderful exchange where each person coming to the table feels like they're offering something in the work relationship. So as we design our, our training for our various employees, we want to look at the employees as a group, but also as individuals. So we talk about something called learner readiness, which is, the basic ability to learn. So do they have the necessary skills involved? So if there are language issues, perhaps we want to give them some help with English as a second language, as an example. Another aspect of learning has to do with learner motivation. So if learners aren't excited and interested and value training and learning, then you can't really force somebody to learn. So this becomes an important aspect. If you can infuse this level of learning and make it an important part of your organizational culture, then you're more likely to have people engaged in learning. And then lastly, employees must be able to feel that they have the capability. So this whole idea of self-efficacy, that we can learn and we can be better and we can do things that we might have thought previously that we couldn't do. And reinforcing this from a manager's standpoint can be very powerful. I mentioned a few minutes ago that each of us has some different learning styles. So many of us today in class are adult learners. So adult learners have slightly different learning styles than your typical traditional learners, say of a college age or K through 12. We call this whole concept of adult learning andragogy, as opposed to K through 12 learning, which is pedagogy. So adult learners, we know, really need to know why they're doing something, why they're learning something. How does it integrate into the greater whole? What importance is placed with it? They also like to have a say in how they're learning, and they want to have some self-direction and a very hands-on approach. They're not as interested in abstract theory as they are in hands-on and making sure that it has relevance. Relevance in the workplace is very important. Also, this concept of a problem-centered approach to learning. So not just, again, sort of an abstract theory, but dig in, see a problem, look at all the various approaches, and learn from that standpoint and how we get from identifying a problem all the way to solution. And that's a really powerful method for training with adults. And lastly, because we talked about motivation, we know that adult learners are motivated not only extrinsically but also intrinsically. Extrinsic factors might be external things such as a boost in pay, promotion, that sort of thing. Intrinsic factors might be the sense of pride in learning something new. Pride in learning something that you didn't think that you could do before. Self-enhancement, a higher level self-fulfillment, bringing pleasure by helping others, for instance. So there are many different factors that go into employee motivation, and it's important to identify those and help employees identify them. The first step in training for our employees, we know, should occur with what we call onboarding, or we used to call it employee orientation. It's an orientation to the organization, to the department, to the culture, to the way we do things in our organizations and companies. It can help employees understand what's expected of them. What are the key important things that are expected of them and that will help make them be successful within the company. And also we often share with them more specific job information about safety or protocols, rules that apply to the general employee population. It can also serve as a socialization event where we understand what's valued in terms of characteristics and traits of employees and how they work together, or if they're more individualized in their work tasks. And the last thing is to emphasize that, what it takes to be a high-performing employee within the company. So as we bring our employees in, then we want to not just stop with this onboarding process, but continue to train and develop them. One of the things we understand is that our employees can provide a competitive advantage. If we have high-performing individuals, then they come together as a high-performing team or group that can deliver a better product and a better service. And we do this by identifying the individual needs of our employees and then their group needs as well. You can see on the screen too that we do it not only through training, but designing career paths for employees and overall human resource development ideas that will affect groups of employees, all employees, or individual employees. And then plan ahead to see who might succeed in various top-level positions and groom those employees to move up. And this is what we call succession planning. It starts with a very long-term look at the organization and how long key employees will be in place. Often we see this at the executive level, but we're now seeing it filter down into mid-management and in some cases even into entry-level management positions. So the goal of our employee development is also to remember that is within this organization, and one of our goals is the success and effectiveness of this company or organization. So we would like to see our employees be high performing. And we do this in a number of ways through training, but also reinforce that through other means like performance appraisal and our reward system. So again, if we say that we would like to have an organization where employees perform at a very high ethical standard, but then we reward unethical behavior in terms of salaries and salary raises and promotions, then we're sending mixed signals. So to start with, one of the most powerful tools we can use is the performance appraisal. And it's an ongoing formal system of review and evaluation of an individual or a team based on their performance within the organization. In reality, it's often seen as a very negative process that happens maybe once a year. To do one correctly would be to have an ongoing process, which is a dual, two-way communication system. So, in other words, start out by explaining to employees in the very beginning what's expected. Typically, when I'm in a management position, I like to meet with new employees. I like on the very beginning and sort of set some expectations. I like to meet with them within about 10 days or 2 weeks to sit down over, say, an informal cup of coffee, find out how they're doing, that sort of thing, because we want to reinforce how things are going and make sure that if they aren't getting the training or the assistance and support they need, that is identified early on. I also meet with them again at 30 days, and at that point you begin to see where the rose-colored glasses come off and employees often understand what is truly expected. So when people take a new job, they see what they want to see oftentimes. They see the best of the best. It's kind of like a new going out on a first date. After a few dates, you begin to be a little more realistic in your appraisal of what is and what this person is, both good and bad. And so we're just more realistic. And I think at this point we as employers and managers want to reinforce that this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a realistic appraisal of what's going on and how do they fit in. And I think this is a really, really key point to stay in touch with employees. After that, I like to do an official, very general 90-day performance evaluation, which I typically call a training evaluation, to see where they are in their skill building and their socialization in the organization. Then a more formal appraisal, performance appraisal at 6 months, and then one again at 1 year. And I think if you build in those key time frames, you're more likely to make sure that they happen, and employees will feel like they have somebody who cares and who's truly engaged in their success. Things are slightly different if you work in a union shop. So typically, and performance appraisals are still important, but typically seniority is stressed in terms of promotion and pay raises. But there are other things that we can do to infuse a sense of pride and job well done, and peer evaluations, that sort of thing. And that becomes an aspect of the culture that you want to instill in the organization. So the actual process of a more formal appraisal would start with identifying the specific performance goals that we want to set for the employee. And I would start with, very likely, with that first 90-day post-training evaluation informally, and then definitely formally at the 6-month. Establish performance criteria so they know exactly what's expected of them, and find out from them how they perceive they need to proceed in order to meet those. And then take a look at what they're doing and how that fits in with the goals that you've set. Are there gaps? Are they exceeding their goals? And then discuss this in a two-way conversation with the employee. And then the cycle really should be a circle where at the end of the discussion, new goals are set, and they're set both by the employee and the employer or manager, not top down, but they're mutually established goals. So some of the criteria that we use to look at performance are the things that we have listed there. So have we met the goals that we set? Are there skills and competencies that have been met? So in some industries in particular, there are very specific skills or competencies or certifications that need to be obtained. And then in terms of behaviors and traits, we could think of these in view of perhaps a customer service job. So do they behave in a manner that is conducive to providing excellent customer service? And can they be coached in ways that would enhance that sort of behavior? So we look at a variety of different standards, but we need to set those and communicate those. So in terms of the appraisal, we don't have to just do it between employee and employer. We can involve coworkers, we can involve team members. I know employees dislike this, but I most often use a self-appraisal as well. It's a great way to start a conversation to determine whether or not the manager and the employee are on the same page before the conversation begins. And we sometimes refer to this as a 360 review, where we also reach out to customers and vendors or any stakeholder involved with the organization. So here you can see as one of the methods is this 360 evaluation. Some organizations use sort of a question essay form. There are pros and cons to all of these, and I think that they're discussed in your textbook, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But I would say that I personally like the essay form because it allows me to tailor the document to the individual. But the problem with that, and the reason I don't use it, is that it requires direct knowledge of the employee on a day-to-day basis. Also, it's easy to be subjective. It's difficult to make essays objective across all employees within the same area. And I would caution people from using that because it could be a problem in terms of defending it against perhaps a discrimination suit, even if no discrimination occurred. So some organizations use a ranking system where they rank their employees, and that's done on an annual basis. And one of the negative aspects of this is if the organization decides they need to lay off employees and they say bottom 10% go, you already have it ranked and the bottom 10% go, period, the end. So I find that to be a very negative approach, but if you're in a highly competitive company and industry, then sometimes that's a way to instill even greater competition. So the system that you use should be in sync with your organization's culture and vision and objectives. There are a number of problems that we have as appraisers when we look at employee performance. First of all, a lot of times the manager or appraiser is equally as uncomfortable as the employee, which doesn't really make it any easier on your employee. It is troubling to me that I have seen so many subjective rather than objective appraisals. And I think practice and the desire to learn how to be more objective is very important there, and also the instrument that you choose to use. The halo or horn error is similar to a recent behavior bias, where there may be something particularly outstanding or offensive about an employee, and that colors everything they do. So if you really dislike their tone of voice and you extrapolate that over everything they do, nothing they do will ever be good. And we have to be careful about that, and this is why objectivity is so important. Another thing that often appraisers do is they feel like they have to do this sort of grading curve thing. We call that central tendency. And I know that students object to that. I would object to that. Let's say we have 10 students and we say that 2 have to get an F if 2 get an A, and 3 have to get a D if 3 get a B. I mean, at some point, we're forcing people into categories. So if we have all A's, we should give A's. If we have all F's, we should award the grade that they have earned, not some forced curve. So another thing that appraisers often do is they use the last 2 weeks to evaluate an employee rather than the entire last year. So keeping records and documentation of things that occurred during the year are very, very important. So there's some wonderful reasons I have up here, and I won't read them to you, but why appraisers will intentionally inflate ratings for their employees. Sometimes it has to do with the appraiser's personal needs, whether it's they're uncomfortable giving a negative rating, or they want to look better that they have quality employees, or they want to move somebody out of their department by giving them a good enough rating to get them promoted so they don't have to deal with the problem. So my recommendation is try to be objective and report what has actually occurred over the past period, whatever that time period is. And again, we see it on the other side where nobody's good enough. I would like, at this point, if we were in class, I often raise the question, would you ever give somebody a perfect score? And I will tell you that the majority of students say, no, no one's perfect. And I have to take issue with that, because we're not talking perfection in terms of some altruistic, abstract word. At the beginning of this process, we set goals, and we set expectations for meeting those goals. And if an employee has met those goals, 100% met those goals, then why are they not getting the top rating? And then what you do is say, job well done, and you set new goals. And that's how we continue to encourage and motivate employees to become better and better and higher performance employees. If we punish them by saying, well, nobody can be perfect, so no matter how much you busted yourself to get this done or to be the top person, you're still getting an above average rating. So that's my personal and professional opinion on this. So don't be afraid to award the ratings that were earned. So here are some of the things that we want to try to accomplish in an effective appraisal system. So I can't stress open communication enough, and the process is very important. Allow employees to have a conversation. Allow them to dispute things. Allow them to write in some answers to the things that they may disagree with. But together then set criteria for moving forward. The other thing is make it job related. Make sure that it is objective and it's job related. And again, you're looking at the task performance and the performance within the organization, and that you're looking at the goals that were set. I mentioned open communication, so very important. If you have been talking to employees throughout the year, then the appraisal system, the final appraisal, interview should be a very positive thing. There should be no surprises. It should be, in fact, a celebration of meeting goals or setting new goals, because we've been working together for 6 months or a year or however long it's been, and we've been giving feedback the whole way, both directions. So there shouldn't be any surprises. And some tips on how to conduct the interview. I think that, again, make sure that you have a system in place that you're comfortable with, that puts the employee in a comfortable place as much as they can be. I know that there's a debate over whether you should talk about salaries during the performance appraisal or decouple them. Most organizations do tie their salary raises to appraisal process. So in that case, what I do is I go right in and I immediately put the money on the table. Because otherwise, the entire interview, the employee nods and smiles, thinking that somehow by agreeing, they'll get a higher rating for salary at the end, as if it's not already decided. And they don't really hear what you have to say. By getting the salary out there in the beginning and explaining how you got there, then you can talk through and support it via the actual interview process of the performance appraisal. And I find that that works so much better, and then employees actually listen and they engage. So something to think about. And how you structure it, again, remember that it's a circular event with goal setting and contribution on both sides. So, and here's, I mentioned this in terms of pay or to how you want to handle this. And I gave you one option that I like to use. So we often talk about praise versus criticism. And I think the one thing you do want to do, though, is be honest and objective. So if somebody needs some coaching and assistance and support or training, they need to understand that. And it should be constructive in how it's given. And I think that continually going back to the expectations that were set and the goals that were set is a really good way to look at constructive criticism. And when you finally finish, I think it's really important to leave the performance evaluation with a plan in mind. Where are we going? What you're really saying is this person has value and they have a place in the future of the organization, and that there is some recognition of mutually agreed upon goals for the employee's continued development. So I wanted to sort of wind up by circling back to this idea of a variety of generations that we find populating our employees in today's organizations. And this is very tied into their styles of learning and training that they are comfortable with, and also assimilation into organizations. So our baby boomers we see as those born between World War II and the mid-60s, and many of them were cast aside in terms of downsizing that occurred, and that was very surprising to them because their parents did not experience that. Many of them are staying in the workforce because of the financial situation of our economy. Our Gen Xers are a smaller group than the upcoming Gen Yers. They are typically born between the mid-60s and late 70s. They learned from their baby boomer parents who were laid off at some point and decided that they were not going to be tied to any one employer, that they were their own commodity and would place themselves out on the job market. The Gen Yers often are categorized as those born in the late 70s to the early 90s. And as you can see here, they have no idea what a dial-up rotary phone or a manual typewriter were. Well, they've seen pictures, I'm sure, maybe antiques. They are often referred to as the Echo Boomers and the Nexters. They value a workplace that is fun and rewarding. They have great confidence in themselves. They see themselves moving up quickly. They don't understand why, if they can get an 8-hour job done in 6, that they should have to sit there for 2 more hours. They want flexible work schedules. Again, work-life balance. Another thing about the Gen Yers that's not on the screen is that they often see themselves as citizens of the world and very global in nature. They are also very in tune with the environment and social responsibility. The Gen Is, or sometimes millennials, this was termed by Bill Gates, and this is the first generation to grow up with the internet. And they are just now beginning to populate the workforce, and it will be interesting to see how they change the entire landscape of our organizations. So as you can see, we have a lot. Training and development is a really large portion of human resource management and very critical to developing the human capital within an organization. Since the majority of our companies are now service-based, the quality and performance of our employees is even more important than ever. So thank you and enjoy this module, and we'll see you again for the next module.